Both are. Non-agenda, got it, okay. Non-agenda, got it. Myself water, sorry. 6:30.
We're live.
Thank you. We're going to go ahead and let everyone get seated, and we are going to just waiting for everyone to get seated. So, yes, sir. Okay, meeting is now called to order, and this is a meeting of the City Council, City of University City, City Hall, 5th floor, 6801 Delmar Boulevard, University City, Missouri, 63130. This is Monday, June 24th, 2024. And we are going to start at 6:30. But one point that I want to make is, and I think it's absolutely important to state that this is University City, Missouri, because if you just Google and stick in University City, you'll end up in California. So I just want to make sure we note of that and make note of that for everyone. So again, meeting called to order. Ms. Reese, would you call the roll?
Councilmember Clay.
Present.
Councilmember Teeman.
Present.
Councilmember McMahon.
Here.
Councilmember Hales.
Here.
Councilmember Fuller.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Smotherson.
Here. We have approval of the agenda, and there was no request for any changes to the agenda. May I get a motion to approve the agenda by Mr. Hales and a second by Mr. Fuller? Any discussion? No discussion? All those in favor, say aye. Any nays? No nays. The ayes have it. We have no proclamations at this time. We have approval of minutes, May 26, 2024, study session minutes, Annex in Trinity. May I get a motion to approve? Mr. Teeman and Mr. McMahon is the second. All those, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? I'm sorry. I'm looking at this. No discussion. All those in favor say aye. Any nays? No nays. The ayes have it. We also have the minutes for June 10th, 2024, regular meeting minutes. May I get a motion to approve? Motion to approve, Mr. McMahon. A second is Mr. Clay. Any discussion? No discussion. All those in favor say aye. Any nays? No nays. And the ayes have it. We have appointments of boards and commission. Mr. Clay. Turn on your mic.
That always helps. All right, have 4, but we'll take them, of course, one at a time. Like to reappoint Gerald Lander to the library board.
May I get a motion? A second on that. Mr. McMahon is the second. Any discussion? No discussions. All in favor, say aye. Any nays? No nays. And the ayes have it. Mr. Clay.
Like to reappoint Aaron Ginsberg to the library board.
May I get a second? Mr. Hales is the second. And any discussion? No discussion. All those in favor say aye. Any nays? No nays. The ayes have it. Mr. Clay.
Like to reappoint Mark Barnes to the library board.
A motion for a second. Mr. McMahon. Any discussion? No discussion. All those in favor say aye. Any nays? No nays. The ayes have it. Mr. Clay.
One more time. Kathleen Simpson, like to renominate to the library board.
May I get a second? Mr. Fuller is the second. Any discussion? No discussion. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any nays? No nays. The ayes have it. We now have swearing in the boards and commission. And William, is that, I'll say Meacham, is that right? Was sworn into the Civil Service Board in the clerk's office on June 20th, 24. We now move to citizen participation. And just as a reminder, requests to address the council forms are located on the ledge just inside the entrance Please complete and place the form in the basket at the front of the room. This is a 15-minute session. You each have 5 minutes to speak. And first on the agenda is, and I will call Mr. Frank Ollendorf. Please state your name and address, please.
What can be more exciting for a city council? My name is Frank Ollendorf, 8128 Cornell, here in University City. What could be more exciting in this city than the topic of economic development on Olive? What must it have been like in these council chambers 45, 50 years ago? I'm getting is there feedback here? Okay, I'm thinking while I'm sitting here, this must have been what it was like 50 years ago when our predecessors, city managers, council members, mayors, what are we going to do with this loop down here? It's a pile of crap. What are we going to do with it? How are we going to fix it up? And they did a miracle. The people here before us, you're at that same point on Olive now. The community is excited about it. You've done a great job with the Costco development. And I think you need what I want to comment on is to get excited about this piece on west of Midland on Olive. We need to move ahead and get that developed, but there's a big roadblock. We're not ready for an RFP. We only own half the property. There's a block on the north side of Olive, a block going west from Midland. We only own half of that block. We still have to acquire 5 more parcels of property. You're not going to put out an RFP for half a block when the plan is to have the entire block redeveloped. Before you even talk about an RFP, you got to acquire the other 5 parcels. You have the money in place to do that, the economic development retail sales tax. You got $500,000 a year to acquire property. Until you do, you can't have an RFP. And what I would advocate is that you take another look at the economic development budget. And instead of putting $428,000 into special receptions in the loop, you put $428,000 into acquiring property for economic development. You're not going to develop that parcel on Olive at Midland till you acquire all the property. Can't acquire it without money. That's what the EDRST tax is for. So to summarize, take another look at the budget for EDRST, put some money into acquiring property. You can also put the $1 million you got for the gas station at Quick Trip. You got $1 million. That was a economic development parcel. We bought it with EDRST money. The $1 million you got for it should go back into the pot to buy that property on Olive next to Midland. So budget the money, acquire the property, and let's get going. And thank you for letting me go over.
Thank you. And we'll call our next speaker, and that is Siri Moran.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor Pro Tem and council members. My name is Siri Moran. I'm a trustee of Ames Place. I live at 6652 Kingsbury. This past Saturday, Ames Place, Coca, the post office, University Heights 2, and all the student and private apartment buildings and residences between the Forest Park Expressway and Delmar woke to a very unpleasant and disturbing fact. We were barricaded in with no chance of exiting our neighborhood. These barricades were not scheduled to come down until 11 a.m., the endpoint of the Loop Special Business District sponsored 5K Loop Run scheduled for that morning. No one from our neighborhood was allowed out, nor anyone allowed in. Residents were trying to get to work, visit loved ones in the hospital, meet various other obligations outside the neighborhood. No luck. It wasn't until complaints and tempers reached such a pitch that calls to the mayor and various other city officials forced the police to finally start letting people out at 9:45. This run closed down Delmar from the Tivoli to the Trinity traffic circle, effectively shutting down the 3 outlets into and out of our neighborhood: Melville, Kingsland, and Trinity. It was a loop run, not a straight line run as in the Memorial Day run where runners run by and then traffic is let through. This was a continuous circle, supposedly with no interlude of no runners. Our neighborhood is not just the 215 Ames Place homes and apartment buildings, but it is also home to the Wash U student apartments on Kingsbury and Washington, Coca, the post office, the 560 Music Center, Trinity Presbyterian Church, and University Heights 2. Coca was not informed. They had 10 scheduled classes in the 9 a.m. and 10 a.m. hours. That alone impacted 96 students and 10 staff members whose parents couldn't get it, who couldn't and whose parents couldn't get into the area. They were effectively closed down without notice, affecting revenue. The post office was not notified. No mail could get out to the rest of U City. Wash U Residential Life was not notified. The massive Greenway complex at Melville and Washington houses 50 plus units alone, nor were any of the private property owners on Washington or Kingsbury. We have 2 distinct challenges here. Protocols need to be put in place so that before permits are approved, details flushed out and vetted by the proper city authorities. In this case, the city relinquished oversight of this event to the Loop Special Business District without due diligence in determining the effects on the neighboring area. This was not merely a matter of noise, traffic, or basic nuisances. This became a matter of safety, security, and free passage. We were essentially locked into the neighborhood. Just as important is communication. Prior communication would have opened up a dialogue that could have averted this entire fiasco. No one was contacted before the barricades went up. Not by the city, not by the police, not by the Loop Special Business District. Had we been contacted with enough prior notice, we could have identified potential problems and hashed them out ahead of time. We ask that in the future you seriously consider the effects on the neighborhoods of any action that closes Delmar. What happened last Saturday cannot happen again. Thank you.
Thank you again for all those that came up and spoke. We move now to council comments. Are there any council comments at this time? Mr. McMahon. Yes, sir.
Thank you. I'd just like I spoke with Ms. Moran on that Saturday and I expressed our concerns as well. And I think we should have been a little bit more watchful of that and apologize to the neighborhood. And I think I did on that Saturday when we talked, and hopefully we can put in those protocols. And I know the city manager has discussed that at their development meetings, and it's on the way. And I think maybe we were confused between how the Memorial Day run runs and how this was a little bit different, and we assumed it would run the same. I don't know, but it was a different type of run, and that did exacerbated the problem. And personally, I apologize to you and your neighbors.
Thank you, sir. And I'd also like to comment on that because I was there at the event and spoke at the event for the opening. And one of the things that I found interesting, and I'd like to get clarity on who sponsored that event. Was it actually U City Loop or was it Delmar Loop from St. Louis City? And the reason that I say that is because what I noticed is that the people that were running this event actually spent more time talking to the St. Louis representatives and not the U City representatives. So I'd really like to clarify who. And I'm standing there watching this and I'm thinking to myself, don't you realize you're in U City? This is not St. Louis City. So I'd really like clarity as to who actually sponsored this event. And that way we can actually address those problems a little deeper. Thank you. Mr. Rose, yes, sir.
Mayor Pro Tem Smothers and council members. The sponsor of the June 10th event, which actually happened on June the 15th, was a combination or partnership between the University City Loop Special Business District and the city of St. Louis. I'm not sure what they're called, but it is effectively a community improvement district. And I believe that that was the first attempt to partner on a project in several years. And so where under normal circumstances, the coordinators are the ones that engage the residents, the stakeholders that indicate what the impacts might be, especially for traffic. That did not occur. And so we simply failed, I think, our citizens in this case, that we did not ensure that communication took place. But I have asked Chief Hampton to join us because I did want to hear briefly about traffic flow that occurred during that event, even though I intend to debrief with the organizers here, I believe, on Friday. Chief Hampton?
Good afternoon, Mayor Pro Tem Smotherson, members of the council. Can you hear me well? Okay. First, want to send out an apology. That was not a normal, typical type of race. This is the first time that we've had to deal with the collaboration of the two entities and making that happen. But let me first say, I was one of the first to deny approval of that particular race because there were specifics that needed to be worked out. That specifics of the notifications and what have you. And that is something that the LSBD group themselves, we discussed that with them. So that is something that in the future we hope to have ramifications out. Now, UCPD takes a very delicate approach when trying to ensure roadway safety. So ensuring roadway safety, whether that's the Memorial Day race run, whether that's the homecoming parade, whatever that case is. And that particular strategic planning and action planning is assigned out, and there's meetings that are put in place. In this particular part, we were meeting specifically with the co-sponsor, I guess, as Big River Running, as well as the representatives of the LSBD, but specifically Brandon Wilkes and what have you of the Big River Running, which is a business in our community out on North and South. Cars were allowed access through. Now, if members did get not to see those cars being allowed through, that was a caveat of any particular road closures that we have. And the police were not, the race did not start to 8:30. Police were in place by 8:15. We only had experienced officers at major intersections. So that Kingsland and Delmar and the roundabout, these are officers, these are not cadets or police trainees or parking controllers. So these are uniformed officers with experience on traffic control, and those cars were allowed through. Now, then when there are gaps in that race, we try to accommodate all parties and all parties' best wishes, and making sure that we can accommodate the communities that live north and live south of the road closures, the Delmore Loop. Whenever we close down the Delmore Loop, it's always something that we kind of make sure that the partners are notifying, that there's communications free flowing back and forth, and I guess just taking people's word for it is not the ramification that we need to go as a police entity. And we will make sure that that is done better in the future. But what I can actively say is that MetroLink, the trolley, the fire, EMS, all public safety, they all had to take these same detours and reroutings of potential for this road closure for this small period of time on a Saturday morning. And I do understand, and I don't want to belittle or small how time frame of anyone's wait, but I can guarantee you no one had to wait over 15 minutes. No one had to wait extended periods of time in that aspect before a road gap was in between, because these are not all professional runners running. So their pace is not at a steady pace of runners back and forth and keeping a free flowing going.
Chief, I
Yeah.
think that's fine. I was just
Okay.
going to say, I think in the future, we'll take it upon ourselves as city staff to work directly
Agreed.
with the trustees to ensure that communication happens. Now, where we raised it as an issue with the organizers, clearly it did not occur, and that's my responsibility. So we'll engage the trustees in the future to make sure that communication actually does occur.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Rose. Thank you, Chief Hampton. We'll move on now to public hearing, and we have no public hearings. We have now moved to consent agenda. Mr. Rose.
Mayor Pro Tem Smothers and council members, the consent agenda consists of 3 items tonight. A change order number 3, contract for auditing, consulting and submission for GEMT state reimbursement, and LSBD event budget amendments. Those items can be considered by one action of the council.
Making a motion to approve. Mr. McMahon, and a second by Mr. Hales. Any discussion? Seeing no discussion, all those in favor say aye. Any nays? No nays? The ayes have it. We'll move now to the city manager's report. Mr. Rose.
Mayor Pro Tem Smothers and council members, no additional update on item number 1. If acceptable, I move to item number 2 up under the city manager's report, being a conditional use permit CUP-24-01, a conditional use permit application to allow a banquet hall at 8348 Olive Boulevard in the GC General Commercial District. We have Planning and Development Director, Dr. Wagner, here that will be presenting this item. Dr. Wagner?
Thank you, Mr. Rose. Good evening, Mayor Pro Tem Smotherson, City Council members. This item is actually, I think, the 3rd time that we've been before you on this. Ruby Prodis is here, the applicant, as is Ruby's projected tenant for the building, Damon Patterson. At the last meeting, we submitted the parking agreements that increased the number of spaces to 43 from 20. With that, I would be happy to entertain any questions.
Any questions by council? No questions? Okay. Well, I will say one thing, and I just wanted to explain this. The area that this is in is something that I'm hoping one day that we redevelop all of it. And I mean, anything from 8,200 to 8,500. And I'm hoping that's the case. But the issue that I'd like to bring attention to my council colleagues is that one of the problems, and Councilmember Clay and I have talked about this, in that because our zoning codes allow a property owner to actually go into their building and start investing and making changes without ever notifying the council. And then all of a sudden, then they ask for a CUP, or they don't even have to ask for a CUP because our code simply allows them to go in and make changes and or lease that space to a company or a prospective buyer and have them move in and start investing their money and making changes to that building without ever notifying the council or city manager or this city government at all. And I see that as being a problem. And the reason I say that is because I'm not sure that those are businesses that we're after. I remember that Mr. Fuller just recently mentioned the fact that we had a check cashing place that moved in. We were absolutely, Councilmember Clay and I were absolutely unaware that this place was moving in, but yet they had moved in, renovated the space, and opened for business without explaining or telling us or notifying us at all. What I'm actually saying in reference to this is to the owners of this property. The property isn't attractive at all. I'm hoping that one day this changes. It is not. And the parking situation isn't attractive because when you did have that event 3 weeks ago and whatever, and I was out late and happened to drive by, that was not a well-planned. It doesn't accommodate what you're actually trying to do. The only reason that I actually would agree and vote on this and vote for this is simply because of the money that you've invested. And that's something that I don't want you to lose in. And whatever happens in the future will happen. But again, I want to explain to my colleagues that that's a problem to us. We had a dollar store, not a Dollar Tree store, we had a dollar store open right next door to Domino's Pizza. Had no clue. What the heck do we need a dollar store for? Again, we're having things that are opening and we have no awareness of. Twisted Cafe was another example. They had already invested their money in making the renovations inside. We had no clue what was coming to that place. So again, I think that that's something that we need to address, and I'll go ahead and leave it at that. And I need to get a motion to approve the CUP 24-1. May I get a motion? Mr. Clay, any second? Mr. McMahon, any discussion? No discussion? All those in favor say aye. Any nays? Noted, Mr. Fuller. The ayes have it, and we will approve that. Okay, we'll move on to the next agenda item.
Mayor Pro Tem Smotherson, council members, this next item L3, asks that you consider an extension on the time to submit plans for a building permit and commerce construction for the True Hotel at 711 Kingsland Avenue. Dr. Wagner.
Thank you, Mr. Rose. Yes, this one's fairly straightforward. Tom Douglas from TriStar Properties is here should you have any questions. But the deadline to actually have some be under construction is on August 8th of 2024, which they're not going to make that, although they are submitting building plans for permits relatively soon, but they have requested a 1-year extension to August 8th, 2025.
Okay. I get a motion to approve. Approved by Mr. Teeman, and Mr. Hales is the second. Any discussion? And I only have one question, Mr. Wagner, and that is, do we know or have any idea when they will start? And I definitely understand this deadline, but
Sure. I can ask Mr. Douglas real quick if you'd like.
sure, that's fine. Thank you.
Good evening, council members. My name is Thomas Douglas. We're planning on starting as soon as possible. We've not submitted for the building permits yet, so it'll take some time for them to review the plans. And we're still lining up contractors and getting all our ducks in a row, but we anticipate starting this fall as our goal.
Okay. All right. Thank you, sir. I appreciate that. Thank you. Okay. So we do have a motion and a second, and that it's in the discussion. All in favor, say aye. Any nays? No nays? The ayes have it. Thank you, Dr.
Thank you.
Wagner. We have no unfinished business, and we'll move on to resolutions. And we have Resolution 2024-7, committed fund reserves for various funds. May I get a motion to approve Resolution 2024-7? We have Mr. Hales and a second by Mr. Clay. Any discussion? Seeing no discussion, all those in favor say aye. Any nays? No nays? The ayes have it. We have Resolution 2024-8. And may I get a motion to approve? By Mr. McMahon and a second, Mr. Teeman. We do have a citizen comment before we take that vote. And I'd like to ask Patrick Fox to come forward. And please state your name and address.
Hello, my name is Patrick Fox. I live at 1309 Purdue Avenue. I have some observations on the budget that I wanted to share with you. Wanted to provide a little bit of context first. In my capacity as one of the Parks Commissioners and under the city code, part of our duties are to review that portion of the annual budget in the city pertaining to the Parks and Recreation and make recommendations thereon to the city manager and council. We, despite asking numerous times, have not been allowed the opportunity to do that, which is why I'm here in front of you today. So the first thing I'll say is I have a hard time understanding and reconciling how the Parks Department can go back to the service level that it has, considering there is a 23% decrease totaling 1.94 million in parks. I have a lot of observations, so if you'll bear with me. I don't have the detail to know exactly what that's in. I just know it is in the Parks Department. I'm not sure if it's personnel, although it is probably a whole bunch of it. It is really challenging for me to see how we can get back to the service level that our citizens need in the parks. It's also really challenging for me to see that the capital improvement plan as it currently stands has about a $1.26 million deficit plan this year. And some of the big things that are missing in there are a roof for Centennial Commons. Now, I did share my concern about that, and I know that there are some plans to go ahead and repair parts of Centennial Commons roof, but that roof is beyond its useful life. And according to all experts, when you have a flat roof and you have a place that experiences storm damage, you want to replace it sooner rather than later. One of the things I'm really also challenged with is the lack of detail in some of the CIP. The CIP referred to the Heman Park 3 times, but Herman Park 8 times. There was an E in Metcalf once, and there was not an E in another one. The lack of detail that's provided is really challenging to me. The overall city budget, I will say, $3.5 million deficit. That is big. Last year was $2 million. That's a big jump. And I'm very concerned about the financial trajectory of our city if we aren't more intentional in making some different decisions here. One of the things that really bothered me, and the most generous way I can put it is semantics, but a less generous way is disingenuous. When you went over the amendments to the budget last week, one of them was to eliminate the parks and stormwater transfer to the debt service of $250,000. In their place, you did a transfer from park and stormwater to the general fund, and then a transfer from the general fund to debt services. You essentially created the general fund as a middleman to accomplish the same thing. And I'll be clear in saying, I'm not saying you're doing anything wrong there, but you are achieving the same thing by depleting this park and stormwater funds that already are in a deficit of $554,000 according to this plan. I'm really concerned when you talk about a 1.5% cost of living adjustment for the city as a whole, how that translates into an $856,000 increase for police, $2.1 million increase in services for fire, but yet a 23% decrease for parks. Now, I know within that, there's a lot of fleet service. We seem to be spending a lot of money on our fleets. This year's budget had 1.7 million in fleet. Last year's had 1.6 million in fleet. We cannot continue to spend this much money on fleet and be successful. So these are my observations. I just wanted to share them with you all, and I appreciate you giving me the opportunity to speak. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. And I do wanted to add, last week I mentioned that there was an increase that I was requesting, or I should have requested, and this was for arts and letters, and I'm not sure I got a reply back on that. And that was a $5,000 request that the Arts and Letters Commission was submitting to Parks. And I just wanted to find out if there was any determination as to whether that was submitted. Mr. Rose, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Mayor Pro Tem Smothers and council members, two things. One is that once the budget was released to the council for consideration, which occurred back in April, it was to be released to the Parks Commission or any commission that wanted to review it and provide comment on it. Certainly, it's included on our website, so all residents have access to it. In regards to the Arts and Letters request, I don't know that we have received a request from the Arts and Letters Commission. Again, you have the ability to amend your budget at any time. And so if we receive that request from Arts and Letters, I would bring that forward to the council for consideration.
Okay, thank you, sir. And we'll move on. We now will be voting on Resolution 2024-8. And being though the other discussions, may I get all in favor say aye? Any nays? No nays, and and the ayes have it. We'll move forward now with introducing bills, and this is for the first reading. And we have Bill, it says 9646. I don't have my glasses. 9546. And Ms. Reese, would you please, I'm sorry, is there a councilman to introduce this bill? Have Councilman McMahon. Ms. Reese, please.
Bill 9546, an ordinance fixing the compensation to be paid to city officials and employees as enumerated herein from and after July 1st, 2024, and repealing ordinance number 7344.
Thank you. And now may I get a council member to introduce Bill 9547? That would be Mr. Teeman and I'm sorry, and yes, ma'am, I'm sorry. Ms. John, go ahead, please, Mr.
Thank you,
Mo.
Mayor Pro Tem. With respect to Bill 9547, in the council packet that was sent Friday, the bill, including the exhibits, were sent subsequent to that transmission. The trustee requested certain changes to one of the sections of the lease purchase agreement, which is Exhibit A. Those are shown in red line in the updated city council packet. I believe all the council members received those changes this afternoon, and they're on file with the city clerk. So if there is a request to introduce Bill 9547, it would include those changes. And they've been recommended by bond counsel, unless the council does not desire to include those changes. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so Ms. Reese, the first reading.
Bill 9547, an ordinance authorizing the city of University City, Missouri to enter into a lease purchase transaction, the proceeds of which will be used to finance the cost of acquiring, constructing, reconstructing, remodeling, equipping, furnishing, and otherwise improving the City Hall Annex Building and the Trinity Building, and purchasing police vehicles and equipment, approving the execution of certain documents in connection therewith, and repealing ordinance number 7356.
Thank you. And now we will move on to council reports and businesses. Are there any council reports on our council from any of the council members? No reports. Okay, then we will move on now to citizen participation. And we do have Mr. Gerald Tears. And your name and address, please.
Gerald Tiers, 7345 Chamberlain. The council has voted to do the annex and library project. As you know, I have not been in favor of the annex portion of that project. My concern was that the city would not get good value for money. The project was looking too much to the past and not into the future, that the police headquarters would be better if more central to the city, and that the COP financing potentially threatened other parts of the budget. Now that the city has retained Navigate, possibly the smartest thing the city has done in recent memory, bid cost has come down, the bid cost. It is now a number generally in line with comparable city buildings elsewhere, considering the rise in construction costs, far better than the original bid. This is good. Excuse me. The building we're in tonight is clearly of value historically and intrinsically. One need only look around this council chamber to see that. The same can be said of the old library. Both are wonderful buildings that deserve preservation and use. The annex, by contrast, is a much modified industrial printing plant. The desire to preserve it by extensively modifying it yet again is questionable, driven by its inclusion in section 97 as revised of the city charter, which I personally think was, misguided. However, that all aside, the bills were passed in due fashion by the elected representatives of the residents. That would be you all. I'm told that the COPs have been issued, contracts have been signed. The project is going to proceed as is. It's good that we now have a way forward for the police department. It's high time the city took action to house the police. Hopefully, I was wrong, and it will work out well without harm to city finances and without issues which must be resolved at added cost. I understand there is now a lawsuit over the project financing, although that same method has been used before. What is the value in that action? All that this lawsuit can do is force the city to incur legal costs, possible delays. It cannot benefit the city. At this point, I believe that we all should support this project, regardless of whether we thought it was a good idea or not. The time for arguing is over. Decision is made, ending, for better or worse, years of studies, more studies, estimates, arguments, and delay. Once a reasonably workable decision is made and implementation has begun, it's time to help, not hinder, regardless of one's previous opinions. To do otherwise is to act in a manner contrary to the best interests of the city and the residents. It's important that this project succeeds and is not plagued with overruns, cost overruns, or needless legal expenses. Hopefully, we will indeed finally have a new police headquarters on schedule, within budget, one which will effectively serve the needs of the city for many years. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. And we will now move on to council comments. And were there any council comments at this time? Mr. Fuller.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. I'd like to thank Mr. Tiers for making that statement about let's stop arguing about this. I am appalled that this lawsuit has just added to the cost of the project, and for what frivolous value. Thank you, Mr. Tiers.
Mr. Teeman.
I would just like to, I guess you would say, second that comment. I thought that was magnanimous of you. And thank you for those comments.
Mr. Hales.
I just wanted to make a comment that I wasn't able to get in relative to the race. And I don't know if I misheard, and I don't, but my point is, what I thought I heard was that the request was denied to do the race. And I just want to be sure moving forward that, and it's already been addressed, but that there is a process for how everything gets looked at, and whether or not, since, this is now a city-owned street in the loop, that we're being thoughtful about any potential closures for any amount of time for the residents.
Any other council comments? Seeing that be none, we have no executive session, so may I get a motion to adjourn? Motion by Mr. Hales, a second by Mr. McMahon. Any discussion? No discussion? All those in favor say aye. Any nays? No nays? The ayes have it. Everyone have a good rest of the night. Thank you.